So, I was walking down the halls of this Japanese bookstore when right at the top edge of a shelf, I saw a sparkle. It was the spine of a book I've seen before. It said, "A Dictionary of Japanese Grammar." Being the language nerd I am, I bought it for 3,500 yen, and let me tell you, I had no idea at the time that it was the book that would single-handedly take me out of the intermediate plateau and put all intermediate textbooks I've used up until this point to shame. This is my review of that book. Thanks to these beautiful bastards on the Patreon, I am able to not only make these videos, but nerd out and buy these books to review for these videos. So if you guys would like to help me with that, please consider becoming a Patreon. Credit where credit is due, I first heard about this book from my buddy Koichi over at Tofugu, and I'll link down below his review of it. It's way more in-depth and very well spoken. I don't tend to be a very well spoken person, so if you like more deep, knowledgey bits, definitely go down there. I read his review on it, and he spoke incredibly high of it, but because I am a free language learning addict, I never bought it. If you're new to this channel, you know I love open source, free internet PDFs for learning language. I love how the internet kind of decentralized language learning and made it not just behind this wall of a university, but anybody could do it. It's one of my favorite parts about the internet. But when I opened this book, I knew it was going to be game-changing for me. I knew I had to buy it. And this book, well, okay, so it's one of 3 books, is the Dictionary of Intermediate Japanese Grammar. There's one for beginner and also one for advanced. Because Koichi did such a beautiful job of explaining this book and everything that kind of goes with it, I'm going to rely on you guys to read that, but I do want to give my thoughts and opinions on this book. Now, this book is so dense, I'm going to have to read it off my phone. I counted it, by the way. 194 pieces of unique grammar alone. Along with that, we have 22 pages of compound verbs, 18 pages of compound particles, 13 pages of conjunctions, 6 pages of prefixes and suffixes, and 13 pages of various counters just in the intermediate book. If the beginner and advanced are any indicator, you can kind of triple that for the total volume of knowledge between the 3. Needless to say, this book is incredibly dense. Over 730 pages of just knowledge, and it, in my opinion, is worth every penny of what you pay for it. If you guys are familiar with any of my textbook reviews, I like to put a price on the knowledge. So if you divide it just about what this book is supposed to be about, which is grammar, it comes down to about 5 cents per grammar piece. Now, looking online, there are free grammar tools to learn grammar and to understand grammar for free. But why do I think it's worth 5 cents per grammar point? Well, this is why. If you are like me and you are looking into this book, you are probably intermediate level. And as intermediate level learners, you and I both probably have a problem finding grammar with enough depth of explanation in English, as well as adequate, practice sentences. Things that break down how it's used in a sentence, why it's used in a sentence, how it's not supposed to be used in sentences. Comparing it to similar grammar, but how those grammars contrast. And if we're all honest with ourselves, I haven't found a Japanese textbook that does that adequately until today. Most intermediate textbooks suffer from 2 mortal sins. They either have great English explanations, but next to no examples, maybe 3 sample sentences. Examples of these would be like Tobita and an integrated approach to intermediate Japanese. Or they have lots of examples, but next to no English comprehension, nothing explaining it in whatever native tongue you have. Examples of these would be like the Chukyu Omanobo series, the J501s out there, the Chukyu Kara Jokyu no Nihongos, those type of things. Lots of Japanese examples, lots of reading practices, but next to no English. I found that this is because generally you either have a native Japanese speaker or a native English speaker who have figured this out on their own, but also have to fit it inside a sizable textbook. But for some reason, this done by 2 Japanese professors is brilliant in both. Each grammar piece gets about 3 to 5 pages alone of material. Now, I averaged this out all night last night, so that way you guys don't have to. Every grammar point averages with about 6 key sentences, with blocks to break down what each sentence means. You also get English translations, but that's to be expected. It also averages 10 example sentences. That's right, 10 sentences using this piece of grammar over and over and over again in every instance that it can be used in the language. Now, one of my favorite things is grammar to me works like math in my head, and these books actually break it down into formula. How can you plug A and B to equal C? On top of that, you also get paragraphs of written explanations in English on how to use them. You'll get exactly how it's used in the language and how you can't use it in the language. You also get what I never get in other books, which is comparative paragraphs. So that way they're comparing other grammar points to this grammar point and how they differ and how they're the same and how you can either interchange them or not interchange them, in which situations you can do both. As what I would consider now an upper intermediate learner, this is massive. This was the prayer I've prayed for years. This is the wish I made on the star, was a book that was so in-depth but in English. I have no qualms with learning the language in Japanese. I did that for years in Japan. I dig that system. But if I really want to be scholastic, I need my native language to instruct me on the finite points, the very fine details. I mean, if anything, it combines the best of both worlds. It combines having a Japanese teacher that is English. He's your lecturer, he can explain the grammar, but probably doesn't give that good of example sentences. And also having, you know, the immersion study abroad teacher in Japan that could endlessly write sentences, but maybe isn't the best at explaining the fine details of that grammar point. You actually get both, and you get it in a book, which is amazing because you would normally spend $35 an hour on a language school. Whereas this book, brand new from a bookstore, cost me $37. Now, I'm a bitter old language learner, so if I have to grade this book on a couple of scales, the first one being price is 8. The only reason it's not a 10 is because I am a cheapoid and I would prefer it to be a free ebook and have free information to give everybody. However, I understand that compiling this knowledge takes time, and these people probably did this as a job and should get a little bit of money for it. So it gets an 8. It is definitely worth the value. For content, this is a 10 out of 10. I can't think of any way to improve the content of this book. It is so dense and so helpful that I'm actually, even though I'm past the beginner level, I'm gonna buy the beginner level because maybe there's some subtlety that I didn't pick up on when I was learning the beginner levels in Japan. I'm gonna spend my own money, being the cheapoid that I am, just for the chance of learning something new. That's how much this means to me. The intermediate textbook alone, I call the textbook killer, because what it does is it makes it so that way you can just read native resources and get the same instruction on how stuff's being used in those in this book. You don't need textbooks anymore, or at least I don't. I never use intermediate or above textbooks now. I only use native resources in conjunction with this dictionary. Now, this wouldn't be a review if I wasn't sucking someone's dick and also criticizing. So, my one criticism is not even a real criticism because it's just that it's in alphabetical order, as a dictionary should be. However, if you go through this in alphabetical order, you will probably learn grammar that is extremely helpful day one, as well as some very sparsely used grammar in the first probably 2 years of learning language. So learning something in alphabetical order isn't always the best way. However, if you are so desperate that you can't finish this book, say in 2 years, if you can't wait 2 years to talk to people, if you can't wait 2 years to read a Japanese newspaper, realistically, you probably weren't gonna go the distance in the first place, and that's not me being mean. Here's the truth of the matter. I spent 8 hours a day for, well, actually February is my 4-year anniversary of studying Japanese. 8 hours a day in Japan, and if one of your friends says they were in America and in a college class and were able to read a Japanese newspaper in 2 years, I'm calling BS right now. But if you take the time and study one grammar piece a day from this textbook, only one a day, between the beginner and the intermediate, you should be able to finish in less than 2 years. And I guarantee you're gonna know way more grammar than people that have a degree in Japanese. That's how comprehensive these books are. So if you're like me and you're in the intermediate level and you're finding that textbooks are beginning to wane in how rewarding they are, how much information you get, how your comprehension is taking up, or you're also like me and a self-taught learner who is finding it harder to get a plethora of example sentences in order to get comprehension of how it's supposed to be used, or even explanation that's really good, please buy this book. It is the single best book I've bought for Japanese, I would say. From this language learner, I give it a 9 out of 10, and at least the beginner book should be on every language learner shelf. And hey, if you're inclined to, be sure to like this video down below. It helps me so much, helps my SEO, especially with this new YouTube announcement of the 4,000 watch hours. If you've made it this far, you are a true champion. If you guys got any questions, comments, concerns, or compliments, I always answer them down below. I read them every day, 9 to 5. This is what I do. I started this channel to help you, and I will continue to do it until they put me in the ground or force me to stop, whichever comes first. If you guys like this video, I live stream every Saturday. You can ask me any questions you have. We watch anime together. We talk about Japan and Japanese. It's a great time. Got a Discord server, got a Patreon. Oh, that's right. I haven't checked it in like a week and a half. I have a mailbox too if you guys want to send me something. And I also have a podcast every single Tuesday now. We changed it to Tuesday. That's Dungeons and Dragons podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys so much. Next week's gonna be the State of the Union. Have fun, love hard, love deep.